Send me $5,000 for my grad trip to Europe. I texted back quickly under the table. You mean $500, right? My name is Maya, and at 32, I own a graphic design studio I built from scratch. It's my pride and joy, a testament to late nights, ramen noodle dinners, and a stubborn refusal to fail. That refusal was a skill I learned early, mostly out of necessity. You see, in my family, there were two roles: the star of the show and the stagehand who worked in the dark to make sure the star's spotlight never flickered. My sister was the star. I was the stagehand. Recently, my family decided my role should also include being the show's sole financial backer. They demanded I fund my sister's $5,000 graduation trip to Europe. When I refused, they took it anyway, using a credit card I had entrusted to them for emergencies. They thought I would just stand in the wings and applaud. They had no idea I was about to walk on stage, flip on the house lights, and cancel the entire production. This isn't one of those heartwarming stories about forgiveness. This is about what happens when the quiet one finally gets loud. I was in the middle of a critical design presentation with a new client, my cursor hovering over a branding concept I'd poured weeks into, when my phone began to vibrate against the polished surface of the conference table. It wasn't a gentle buzz. It was a frantic, insistent tremor, like it was trying to escape. I glanced down and saw my sister's name, Chloe, flash on the screen. I rolled my eyes and silenced it. Chloe, at 18 and in her senior year, treated every minor inconvenience like a world-ending catastrophe. I let the call go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. By the fifth call, my client was looking at me with polite concern. I declined the call one last time, my focus frayed. A moment later, a text message popped up. Send me $5,000 for my grad trip to Europe. I actually let out a short, sharp laugh. My client looked at me, confused. I thought it had to be a typo, a joke. For a high school graduation trip, I could fly to the coast, stay for a week, and eat like a queen for that kind of money. I texted back quickly under the table. You mean $500, right? Her reply was instantaneous. No, 5,000. Flights, hotels, trains, food. I want it to be perfect. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I stared at the glowing screen, a cold, familiar sense of dread washing over me. This wasn't a joke. This was an expectation. For her, once-in-a-lifetime was something you demanded, not something you earned. I typed back, my thumbs moving with a firm, final resolve. That's insane, Chloe. Get a job and earn it yourself. End of conversation, I thought. I was wrong. It was just the opening act. Within minutes, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a group chat with my parents. The first message was from my mom. Your sister has worked so hard this year, Maya. Don't be selfish. Help her. Followed immediately by one from my dad. Pay for your sister's trip. It's the right thing to do. The right thing to do. That was their go-to phrase, the universal remote they used to control me. For them, the right thing was always synonymous with what we want you to do. I put my phone face down on the table, a hot flush of anger creeping up my neck. I had helped my family. I had helped them more than they or anyone else knew. Every time they were tight on bills, every time an unexpected expense popped up, I was the one who quietly wired the money, no questions asked. I was the dependable one, the responsible one. But $5,000 for a European vacation tour? That wasn't help. That was funding a lifestyle of pure, unadulterated entitlement. The rest of the day was a write-off. I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, a foolish part of me hoping for an apology, or at least a text acknowledging the absurdity of their demand. I received nothing but a wall of silence. Around noon, I saw a voicemail notification from Chloe. I didn't need to listen to it to know its contents. It would be a masterclass in guilt. A whiny, dramatic monologue about her one special trip being ruined by her cruel, selfish sister. I listened anyway, a form of self-punishment. Her voice, trembling with practiced theatricality, blasted through my phone speaker. You're so selfish, Maya. It's just a graduation trip. Why can't you help me for once? For once. The words nearly made me drop my phone. For once. I was the one who had co-signed for my dad's car after his credit tanked. I was the one who paid for my mother's emergency root canal that had somehow morphed into a full set of porcelain veneers. I was the one who had quietly set up and funded a credit card in my name, with them as authorized users, for real emergencies only. I deleted the voicemail halfway through, my hand shaking with a rage that was years in the making. By 3 o'clock, I was too irritated to work. I closed my laptop and sat there, replaying the day's events in my head. My sister's tone, my parents' texts, it all screamed one thing. They didn't hope I would say yes. They expected me to. In their minds, my success wasn't my own. It was a family resource, a community fund they were entitled to draw from at will. Somewhere along the line, my role had shifted from daughter to benefactor, and I hadn't even noticed until they sent me the invoice. I tried calling my mom, hoping to inject some semblance of reason into the situation. She answered on the second ring, her voice already weaponized. "Have you decided to stop being cruel to your sister?" she snapped. I took a breath. "Mom, I am not paying $5,000 for a high school graduation trip. That's ridiculous. You can afford it," she shot back instantly. "You own your own business. It's not like you're struggling. And that doesn't make me a bank," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "She is 18 years old. She can get a part-time job. You don't talk to your family like that," she hissed. "We're struggling, Maya. You have no idea what we've been through since your father's hours were cut." "Struggling?" I said, half laughing. "Then why does Chloe need to see the Eiffel Tower and the Colosseum on my dime? Why not a trip to the Grand Canyon in the car I helped you pay for?" There was a moment of dead silence. Then, she hung up. Not a goodbye. Not a "we'll talk later." Just the sharp, final click of a disconnected line. A minute later, a text from my dad appeared. "Pay for your sister's trip, or don't bother calling yourself a part of this family." I stared at the screen, stunned. It wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum, an emotional blackmail of the highest order. After everything I had done, all the quiet support, the checks written without a second thought, this was what it came down to. My membership in the family was conditional, and the dues had just been raised to an extortionate new level. I sat there for hours, the messages glowing on my phone's screen. For the first time, I began to seriously question everything. Had I been helping them, or had I simply been enabling them? Looking back, the pattern was painfully clear. They had been running on a system of favoritism since Chloe learned to talk. She was the surprise, the miracle child, born years after me. I was just the warm-up act. Everything I accomplished was expected. Everything she accomplished was celebrated. When I graduated from college, my parents said, "That's nice. Just don't forget to help us out." When Chloe got her first 1,000 followers on TikTok, they threw a party. When my dad's company downsized and his hours were cut, I had stepped up. I was the one who set up the emergency credit card, a safety net that I alone funded. "This is for necessities only," I had told them. "Car repairs, medical bills, groceries, if things get really tight. That's it." For the first few years, I trusted them. Life got busy, my business took off, and I stopped checking the statements as closely. Big mistake. Slowly, things had started to feel off. Chloe began posting photos of expensive clothes and weekend trips with friends. My mother started calling more often, always with a vague story about an unexpected expense. My dad, when I asked him what was going on, would just deflect. "Your mother's handling it," he'd say. The math wasn't adding up, but I had ignored it. When you grow up being the designated problem solver, you start to confuse being used with being needed. It's embarrassing to admit, but I think part of me liked being the dependable one. It made me feel like I finally mattered. Turns out, I mattered exactly as much as the credit limit on their emergency card. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay in the dark, my mind racing. I had a decision to make. I could cave, as I always had, and write the check. I could buy a few more months of their conditional, transactional affection. Or I could say no and face the consequences of their ultimatum. By the time the sun came up, I had made my choice. I was done being the stagehand. I was done being the money tree. The next morning, I woke up with a cold, hard knot of resolve in my stomach. I told myself I would ignore them, focus on my work, and let the dust settle. Then my phone buzzed with an alert I hadn't seen in years. It was from my bank's fraud detection system. Alert. A charge of $5,000 at Global Voyager Travel on your Platinum card ending in 1881 has been flagged. Was this you? Reply yes, or no chart, not. I froze, my coffee mug halfway to my lips. That was the emergency card. I hadn't set up the alert. It was an automatic feature for unusually large purchases. I hadn't used that card myself in over a year. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I immediately replied no. A second later, a text came through. "Thank you. The transaction has been declined. A temporary hold has been placed on your account. Please call the number on the back of your card. *times. So they hadn't waited for my answer. After I had refused, they had just gone behind my back and tried to take the money anyway. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me speechless. They hadn't just ignored my no. They had treated it as a mere inconvenience, a small hurdle to be bypassed. I called my sister first. She picked up, her voice sleepy. "Morning," I said, my own voice flat. "Did you just try to book a $5,000 European vacation on the emergency credit card?" "What?" she mumbled. "No." "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Chloe," I snapped. The bank just flagged and declined a $5,000 charge at a travel agency. I didn't do anything, she said, her tone flipping instantly from sleepy to defensive. Ask Mom. She huffed and hung up. Next, I called my mother. She answered in her sweet, manipulative tone. Maya, good morning. I was just thinking about you. Cut it, I said. Why did you just try to charge $5,000 to the emergency card? There was a brief pause. Then, oh that. Don't worry about it, honey. It was just to hold the trip. You can just call the bank and approve it. Hold the trip? For what, exactly? You know, for Chloe, she said, her voice dripping with condescending patience. We're just trying to make things easier for everyone. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Easier? You call trying to steal from me easier? Don't be so dramatic, she snapped, her sweet facade evaporating. You act like we're strangers. We're family. You wouldn't even have that business if it wasn't for our support. My business? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You mean the business I started with a loan that I paid back? With interest? In 2 years? The business you didn't even come to the launch party for because Chloe had a dance recital? You need to calm down, Maya, she said coldly. Just approve the charge and stop making everything a fight. She hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, the conversation replaying in my head. This wasn't just a one-time act of desperation. This was a pattern. This was a system. And the declined $5,000 charge wasn't the crime. It was just the red flag that signaled the existence of a much larger, much more terrifying iceberg hidden beneath the surface. For years, I had only been seeing the tip. Now, I knew I had to see what was lurking in the depths. That's when I thought of my friend, Liam. Liam is a forensic accountant, a bloodhound who can sniff out financial deception from a mile away. I shot him a text. Hey, need your expert eyes on something. It's family related, and it's ugly. He replied in seconds, my favorite kind of ugly. Come by my office tonight. Bring your laptop and all your passwords. That evening, I sat in Liam's sterile, minimalist office as he navigated the labyrinth of my financial history. He wasn't just looking at the one credit card. He pulled my full credit report. He was quiet for a long time, just scrolling, his brow furrowed in concentration. The silence was more terrifying than any accusation. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Well, he said slowly, it's worse than you thought. What do you see? I asked, my voice a whisper. He turned the laptop toward me. Okay, so this is the emergency card you gave them. He pointed to the statement. It was a sea of small, insidious charges. Online clothing boutiques, expensive restaurants, subscription services, all cleverly disguised under vague merchant codes. The emergency fund had been their personal slush fund for years. The total was just over $20,000. That's bad, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. That's not the bad part, Liam said grimly. He clicked over to another screen. This is the bad part. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. There were 2 other credit cards listed, both high-limit accounts, both from banks I had never done business with. And there was a personal loan for $15,000. All of them were in my name. And all of them were maxed out. I don't understand, I stammered. These aren't mine. I never opened these accounts. Your parents did, Liam said, his voice gentle but firm. They used your social security number and personal information probably years ago to open these accounts in your name. They've been living a second life on your credit. We're not talking about $20,000, Maya. We're talking about a total of just over $80,000 in fraudulent debt. The room started to spin. $80,000. Identity theft. Fraud. This wasn't just a case of being used. This was a calculated, long-term campaign of financial abuse. Liam kept scrolling, his tone clinical, detached. They've been making the minimum payments on these hidden accounts, probably using the money from the emergency card you were funding. It's a classic shell game, moving your money around to cover the debts they were racking up in your name. It all clicked into place with a sickening clarity. The constant emergencies, the vague stories about bills, my sister's inexplicably lavish lifestyle. They hadn't just been bleeding my savings. They had been systematically destroying my financial future, all while I was working 60-hour weeks to build it. I should have felt heartbroken. I should have been devastated. But I wasn't. The sadness and disappointment had burned away, leaving behind something cold, hard, and sharp as a shard of glass. Liam began printing out the records, page after damning page. You need to file a police report, Maya, he said, his tone serious. This is felony identity theft. This is not a family squabble you can just work out. I stared at the thick stack of papers he handed me, each page a testament to a betrayal so profound it was almost beyond comprehension. "Oh, I know," I said, my voice quiet, devoid of all emotion. "And I'm not going to work it out. I'm going to end it." I went home that night and laid the printed papers out across my kitchen table. It was a puzzle of my own life, a life I hadn't even known I was living. Lines of transactions, dates, and charges filled every inch of the surface. Jewelry stores, high-end department stores, even payments to a luxury car dealership. It was a detailed invoice for my own destruction. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, looking at it all, the pieces of their deception falling into place. My phone buzzed a few times. My mother, my father, even Chloe. I didn't answer. I was done reacting to their manufactured dramas. I was done being a character in their play. It was time to write my own ending. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. The same home sweet home sign hung crookedly by the front door. The hypocrisy of it was breathtaking. I didn't knock. I used my old key, the one my mother hadn't known I'd kept. I walked in to find the three of them sitting in the living room, a tableau of suburban normalcy. My mother was reading a magazine, my father was watching TV, and Chloe was, as always, glued to her phone. They looked up, surprised. Then their faces hardened when they saw the look in my eyes and the thick manila folder in my hand. "Maya," my mother said, her voice tight with a forced, brittle warmth. "We were so worried. You didn't answer our calls." "Yeah," I said, dropping the folder onto the coffee table with a thud that echoed in the silent room. "I've been busy." "Let's talk about these." I spread the papers out across the table, the credit card statements, the loan agreement, the full, unadulterated truth of their secret financial lives. "What is this?" my mother snapped, her face going pale as she recognized the documents. "How dare you spy on us?" "Spy on you?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Mom, these accounts are in asterisks my name. You didn't just borrow from me. You committed identity theft. You've racked up over $60,000 in fraudulent debt under my social security number." My dad finally spoke, his voice low and firm. "You're supposed to help us, Maya. We're your family. Did you know about this?" I asked him directly, pointing to the statements. "Did you know she was opening accounts in my name?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "Your mother handles the finances," he mumbled. "We did what we had to do. You did it with my future," I said, my voice steady. "You took my good name, a name I have worked my entire adult life to build, and you dragged it through the mud of your own financial irresponsibility." My sister finally looked up from her phone, a sneer on her face. "You're being so dramatic," she said. "It's just money." I turned to her, my voice dropping to a cold, quiet whisper. "You don't get to say that when you're wearing a $2,000 handbag that was bought with a fraudulent credit card in my name. You don't get to say that when your entire life has been a vacation paid for by me." She sank back into the couch, for once, speechless. "Given me." I cut her off, my own voice rising. "You gave me a lifetime of being second best. You taught my sister that she was a princess, and I was the court jester who was supposed to fund the castle. You didn't give me anything. I earned it, and you stole it." The fight went on, a circular, toxic dance of blame, denial, and gaslighting. But for the first time, their words didn't penetrate. They were like arrows bouncing off a suit of armor I hadn't known I possessed. The armor of the truth. Finally, I held up a hand, cutting off my mother's tirade. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done arguing. Here's what's going to happen." I laid out my terms, my voice as calm and dispassionate as a lawyer reading a contract. "You have 30 days to pay back every single cent of the $80,000. The $60,000 in fraudulent debt and the $20,000 you siphoned from the emergency card. I want it all closed, settled, and out of my name." My father laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Where are we supposed to get $80,000? "I don't care," I said. "Sell the house, sell your cars, sell Chloe's designer wardrobe. Figure it out. Because if that debt is not cleared in 30 days, this folder," I tapped the pile of evidence, "goes directly to the police, and I will press charges for felony identity theft and wire fraud. And you will both go to prison." The threat hung in the air, heavy and absolute, but I wasn't finished. "And there's something else," I said, pulling one last document from the folder. It was a copy of my grandfather's will. "You remember Grandpa's trust, right? The one that's supposed to pay out to you next year?" I looked my mother in the eye. "You remember the clause about what happens when a beneficiary commits financial fraud against another family member?" The color drained from her face. She remembered. "If you are convicted of, or even plead guilty to, fraud against me," I explained for the benefit of my father and sister, "you forfeit your entire share of the trust. A trust, I believe, that is currently valued at over $200,000. So you see, you can't afford not to pay me back." I stood up and gathered my papers. 30 days, I repeated, walking toward the door. The clock starts now. I walked out of that house while they were still standing there, frozen in a state of stunned, horrified silence. The drive home was quiet. The rage had subsided, leaving behind a strange, calm emptiness. I had just threatened to destroy my own family, and I had never felt more free. For the first 2 weeks of my 30-day ultimatum, the only communication I had with my family was through their lawyer. He called with offers, with counterproposals, with veiled threats. They would pay back a portion of the debt. They would agree to a long-term payment plan. They would do anything except what I had demanded, a full, immediate repayment. I rejected every offer. $80,000 in 30 days, or we proceed with criminal charges, I told him, my voice a broken record of unyielding resolve. Then, the desperate, pleading calls and texts began, a pathetic, last-ditch effort to appeal to a sense of familial duty that they themselves had systematically destroyed. I didn't answer. I didn't respond. I was a stone wall. On day 27, 3 days before my deadline, my cousin Alex called. He was one of the few relatives who had always treated me with simple, uncomplicated kindness. "Hey," he said, his voice hesitant. You hear what's going on with your folks?" "No," I said. "Why?" "They're selling the house," he said. "Like a fire sale. They listed it way under market value for a quick cash offer. The moving trucks were there this morning." I was silent for a moment, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Deep down, I had known this was the only way. "Where are they going?" I asked. "Some small rental apartment on the other side of town," he said. "And Chloe, she got a job. A real one. Working retail at the mall." The image of my spoiled, pampered sister folding sweaters for minimum wage was so jarring, so completely outside the realm of my experience, that I almost smiled. "Guess her European vacation fund finally ran dry," I said. "Yeah," Alex sighed. "Life hit them hard, Maya. They're telling everyone you forced them out of their home, that you're cold and heartless. Let them," I said, a strange sense of peace settling over me. "The people who matter know the truth." 2 days later, on the final day of my ultimatum, a wire transfer for exactly $80,000 appeared in my bank account. It was followed by a single, curt email from my mother's lawyer. "Our clients have fulfilled their obligation. We expect you to honor your end of the agreement and drop the threat of legal action." I spent the next week systematically paying off the fraudulent debts, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I closed the accounts, one by one. With each confirmed payment click, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was erasing them from my financial life, scrubbing their toxic influence from my name. When the last account was closed and my credit report was finally, blessedly clean, I sat back in my chair and took the first deep, untroubled breath I had taken in years. A few days later, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but some lingering curiosity made me pick up. "The money is paid," he said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual bluster. "Are you happy now?" "It was never about being happy, Dad," I said quietly. "It was about being respected. It was about ending the abuse." "You've destroyed this family," he said, the words heavy with a bitter, self-pitying resentment. "No," I replied, and the truth of the words felt as solid and real as the ground beneath my feet. "You all did that, long before I ever sent that first check. You just finally sent me the bill." I hung up, and this time, I knew it was for good. I blocked his number, my mother's, and my sister's. The era of the money tree was officially over. Months have passed since I walked out of that house for the last time. The silence from my family is a constant, peaceful presence in my life. The anger has faded, leaving behind not sadness, but a quiet, clarifying emptiness. It's the clean, empty space you have after a condemned building has been demolished. A space where you can finally start to build something new, something strong, on a foundation of your own making. My cousin Alex tells me they are struggling. They are not used to a life lived within their means. Chloe, he says, hates her job but is, for the first time in her life, learning the simple, brutal math of a budget. My parents are bitter and resentful, casting themselves as the victims in a story of their own creation. I feel a distant, abstract pity for them, the way you might feel for characters in a tragedy you're reading. But their story is no longer my story. The money from my grandfather's trust, the money my mother forfeited, sits in a managed investment account, a silent testament to a grandmother's foresight. I haven't touched it. It's not a prize. It's a protection. It's a wall I have built between my future and their chaos. My business is thriving. My days are long and filled with creative challenges, the good kind of stress that comes from building something you believe in. I sleep better. I laugh more. I feel lighter. As if I had been carrying a heavy, invisible weight on my back for my entire life and have only just now set it down. People say that family is everything, that you should forgive and forget. But they don't talk about the kind of family that sees you not as a person but as a resource. They don't talk about the kind of love that comes with an invisible invoice. I've learned that boundaries are not cruel. They are a necessary act of self-preservation. I've learned that you can love people from a distance, and you can mourn the family you wish you had while walking away from the one that was draining you dry. They will probably always tell people that I am cold, that I am selfish, that I abandoned them in their time of need. But I sleep peacefully at night, because I know the truth. They didn't call me selfish for having money. They called me selfish when I finally decided that I was worth more than what I could give them. And I'm not the one who treated a daughter like an ATM. I'm the one who finally, after 26 years, had the courage to shut it down.